Hi everyone, hope you are feeling positive and healthy. Please subscribe with all bell notifications if you haven't already, and please don't hesitate to leave your valuable feedback and advice below. Thank you very much. Let's jump into the stories. Am I the unreasonable one, plus my fiancée, for getting nicer engagement rings just to spite her brother/my future brother-in-law? Asking on behalf of both my fiancée and I, but obviously I'll be the one narrating the post. We got engaged a few months ago. We were both planning to propose on the same date lol. But I got it done first, but we didn't propose with rings, because we both wanted to pick out our own rings and go through that process together. We're both women, so 2 engagement rings, double financial whammies. Something to note is that we are both very privileged and have been given big head starts in life by our families. My fiancée and her older brother, the brother-in-law in question, both had their colleges paid for, including law school/med school, were given very nice cars, and a very large lump sum intended for a down payment on a house. I also had my schooling paid for and my parents paid for the down payment of the condo we live in right now. Our jobs are also very secure, and relatively high paying, so financially we're doing great, especially considering we don't have/want kids too. Since we generally don't live very lavishly, save for retirement, etc., we wanted to go a bit over the top on our rings, since we both have dreamed of having the perfect engagement ring since we were young. We're getting our rings custom made. When my fiancé's older brother found out we were getting our rings custom made, he asked us to pick smaller, more low-key rings because he didn't want his fiancée to see our rings and be upset with him. He proposed to her with a $300 ring, which I'm guessing she wasn't happy about. He could have definitely afforded something way nicer as a surgeon with no loans and a house half paid for him. He just thinks C-rings are a waste of money. He wanted us to get cheap, or at least much cheaper than we were planning, rings so that his fiancée wouldn't be jealous if she saw our rings and get upset with him. I said no, because why in the hell would I choose my engagement ring based off of what another couple wants? And he told, not asked, us to buy a separate ring to wear whenever we came into contact with his fiancée/to post on social media. In all honesty, this was like the straw that broke the camel's back. I don't like my brother-in-law at all. He's rather rude, low-key misogynistic, and very entitled. My fiancée and his relationship is a very bleak May, and really only held together by the willpower of her parents. I'll admit that I'm petty, so as soon as we hung up on him, I suggested we significantly upgrade our ring budgets, to a level we could still comfortably afford, out of spite. My fiancée thought it'd be funny, so she agreed. I sent my brother-in-law the CAD mock-ups of our upgraded rings, that showed some pretty big rocks, and he called me an a-hole. Are we not the unreasonable one? If he supposedly doesn't care about engagement rings or thinks they're not worth spending on, he has no business asking you to have yours made a certain way. He was cheap, didn't put any thought into it, and now he's going to get embarrassed because of your custom ring. That's on him, not on you. Also, the heartfelt gesture of having a ring custom done is very nice. It's not about the money you put into it, it's the thought and time put into the ring. Even if you do put a lot of money in. Last edit, just to be 100% clear, I am absolutely not knocking people with rings $300 and under. My ring is a beautiful one given to my husband from his grandmother. I'm putting the value on heartfelt gesture. I've loved seeing your stories about your rings. Not the unreasonable one. I've never heard of anything so ludicrous. One thing I will say, though, choose the rings you want out of love for each other, not spite for your brother-in-law. You don't want your engagement rings to be an emblem of that relationship. Am I the unreasonable one for buying my son a pink iPad? This is a weird one. My son is 7 years old and autistic. At his school they use iPads for literacy games. According to his teacher, he really engages with these games. But as they only have one iPad for the entire class, he often doesn't get to use it for more than 10 minutes. So today, after a discussion with my partner, we decided to go out and buy him his own iPad. Nothing special, just the base model. He did pick out the rose gold version because he liked the color. He thought it was pink and he loves pink. We did this so he has more time to learn from the things that he is engaging with, as opposed to trying to force him to learn in other ways, which usually just ends up with him getting overly frustrated. It was still a rather expensive purchase for my family, but luckily I had some money stashed aside and I used that. My son was excited about his new iPad, so we video chatted to my mom and told her about his new iPad. She was disgusted that we spent so much money on him. She was disgusted that we got him a pink one because he will be teased for having a pink iPad. And he has enough issues without getting a pink iPad as well. I told her the color doesn't matter, we can always put a case on it and it's his iPad. He should be able to get whatever color he wants. She then said we were a-holes for getting him an iPad because he needs to learn how to share with other kids. Keep in mind, this iPad is strictly to be used at home. We aren't going to let him take it to school. It's just so he can practice in his own time at home at his own pace. She's furious with us for enabling another spoiled child, and I'm annoyed at her for not seeing how this can benefit my son. Am I the unreasonable one for buying my son a pink iPad? Not the unreasonable one. Your mom sounds super judgmental and negative. I still don't get what's so wrong with using the color pink for boys. He chose it himself. He likes the color. Pink for girls and blue for boys is the old traditional BS almost nobody wants to get over with. And no, I don't think you spoil him for buying him an iPad. I assume he doesn't get such expensive gifts often, considering the stash, and it's literally so he can learn at his own pace. Not the unreasonable one. Am I the unreasonable one for embarrassing one of the preschool moms? This happened months ago, but I'm still feeling the effects of it. My husband, 29, and I, 26 years old female, enrolled our daughter, 4, in preschool last year. This was at a period where my husband was struggling with work and I was working insane hours, so he was the one who always took our kid to preschool. As time went on, he told me a lot of the mothers noticed his wedding ring, but absence of me, and overheard him saying to our daughter, "Sometimes I know you miss mommy and she really wishes she could be here." They just assumed he was a single dad, and even when he corrected them by simply saying he wasn't, they seemed to paint a negative picture of me. Things eventually eased with my job and I managed to take my daughter to preschool by just reverse sometimes with my husband. He finally found a solid job, so I started taking her by myself more, and the moms started talking to me once the kids were inside. I wanted to try and get along with them, but it was hard from the start. They made comments about my absence, how it looked bad that I couldn't be bothered dropping my kid off until that moment. I realized they had their own clique and were very judgy, and they even started making comments about my marriage. I ignored it, wanting to be civil, and this continued for weeks. Their constant jabs at me wore me down because they were nothing but nice when their partners appeared and were little angels when my husband was around. There was one day where one of them said something to me when they thought my husband was listening, and I snapped. The kids were inside at this point and I just said, I wasn't here because I was busting my ass working to support me and my own. You spend so much time criticizing me and my life that you can't see how hollow yours are, as you have to find happiness by tearing me down. Ever since that day, I learned that I embarrassed the mom in front of her husband, who realized how bitchy she was. They've left me alone, but they don't let their kids near my daughter outside of preschool. The only kid close to her age is my best friend's nephew, and I feel horrible because the kids aren't at fault. My husband says that may be true, but I'd be exposing our kid to the toxic mothers. I'm considering perhaps apologizing, as maybe I was an unreasonable person and I don't want my kid to be left out. Am I the unreasonable one? You could apologize and give them the moon and they would still crap on you. Edit. Not the unreasonable one. 100% not the unreasonable one. My husband is the stay-at-home parent while I work full-time. He gets looks like he is shifty or creepy for being at the playground with the kids. He said moms and grandparents go talk to the principal because he's on the schoolyard watching his kids play. He's got no "daddy is babysitting" comments all the time. Judgy moms are the worst. Don't feel bad, just try to make friends with some of the other parents. Am I the unreasonable one for losing it with my friend when she accused our other friend of ableism? The characters in this story are me, 24 years old male, Lucy, 24 years old female, and Joe, 25 years old male. A few years ago, I had a health condition which required me to undertake knee disarticulation surgery. In simple terms, my right leg was amputated from the knee and all I have intact is the thigh. I have a prosthetic leg now. There's a lot of things I can't do, and a big thing is going on runs. Once I was out of physical therapy, I did attempt to go jogging with my prosthesis, as it wasn't impossible to do. However, I found it extremely uncomfortable due to the movements of the prosthesis and eventually gave up on attempting it. I've tried various other exercises involving legs over the years and have concluded the only thing I am comfortable with is walking, so I try to do that and some other things to stay healthy. Before this, Joe used to be my running partner and our friend Lucy was never interested. Joe came with me when I attempted to run again and I told him clearly that my running days were over. He was a bit sad by it, but understood completely and has since respected my wishes and never invited me out to runs with him. Here's the problem. Lucy started running and has been going out with Joe. She wondered why I wasn't going until she asked Joe one day in front of me. Joe just said outright, he literally has tried running and just can't do it anymore, so I don't invite him. Why would I? I don't know why, But Lucy took great offense to this. She accused Joe of discriminating against me and enforcing ableism, as he was basically choosing Lucy, who is able-bodied, over me. I told Lucy exactly what I told Joe, that I do not want to go out running, and there was nothing but truth in what he said. She wouldn't stop, and she was making me more and more pissed. I eventually got to the point where I said, "Lucy, just shut up. The only person creating an issue here is you, because there is no problem. I don't want to go freaking running." She left in a huff and has since accused both me and Joe of being Oz, but mainly me for losing it with her. I didn't mean to say what I guess was harsh, but she just kept pushing it. So am I the unreasonable one? Not the unreasonable one. You tried running again and it wasn't for you. That should have been enough for Lucy to back off. She is just causing an argument out of thin air. Not the unreasonable one. She sounds like the typical person who wants to be offended for someone else to make herself look like a good person, but at the same time doesn't care what the person she is offended for thinks. Am I the unreasonable one for refusing to get tested as a kidney donor for my half-sister? My dad and mom got divorced when he confessed he had been having an affair for a year and his mistress was pregnant. When she kicked him out, he went to live with his mistress, but quickly tried to come back when he found out my mom was also pregnant with me. My mom never let him come back, but she offered to let him co-parent. I would spend every other weekend with my dad, but he would also come over to our house a lot in the early years to spend time with me. He came to spend time with my mom, really. When I was 5, my mom met my now stepdad and asked my dad to stop coming over whenever he wanted to anymore. He was pissed and demanded she give him more time with me, so the custody agreement was revised and I started spending 1 week with mom and 1 week with dad until I was 13. I am now 24. My dad lived with his mistress and my half-sister Alice, 25. It was clear both his mistress and Alice hated me and my weeks with them were miserable. My dad wasn't much better. He would try to poison me against my mother and told me to tell her I wouldn't love her anymore if she didn't take my daddy back multiple times. When my mom finally had the custody agreement changed, my dad was angry with me and said I'd betrayed him, and he was no longer my father. He started spending a lot of time with Alice and she would send me tons of pictures with snide comments about how she was always the favorite daughter. Her mother would also send me abusive texts about how she was happy she didn't have to deal with her boyfriend's bastard anymore. When it came to college, he helped Alice and told me to ask my new dad since I wasn't his responsibility anymore. This is also when I asked my mom why she divorced my dad and she explained everything to me. I've had zero contact with any of them since. 2 weeks ago, I received a call from my dad's mistress. She told me Alice was going to die as both of her kidneys were failing and she needed a transplant. Neither her or my dad are matches, and the doctors suggested the best chance for her to get the transplant in time is to find a family match. My father's family, who have no contact with him/Alice/mistress, have all refused to be tested and no one on the mistress side is a match. She says I'm Alice's last chance. I told her I needed time to think about it. Since the call, all I've been doing is thinking about it. If it was my mom who needed the kidney, I would give it in a heartbeat. I've done a lot of research on the effects donating would have on me and I don't think I want to do it even if I'm a match. My mom suggested I agree to get tested and then inform the doctor I don't want to donate even if I'm a match so that they tell them that I'm not one. Honestly, I don't even want to get tested. I feel like if I do and I am a match, the guilt will overwhelm me and I'll agree to donate even though I don't want to. Am I the unreasonable one for refusing to get tested? Not the unreasonable one. They've made it clear they don't consider you family. They certainly wouldn't consider making this sacrifice if you were the one that was sick and there's been no contact for 10 years. They felt perfectly fine alienating and abusing a child for years. They're delusional if they think that child should provide them with help now. Do what you are most comfortable with for yourself. Not the unreasonable one. I think your mom's idea is spot on. Also, I think it is hilarious that your dad's lady friend is stuck as forever girlfriend while he spent years trying to get back with his ex-wife. It apparently bothers her. What with her boyfriend's bastard comments being such a serious projection. Would I call a kid a bastard? No. Do I condone it? Also no. However, I am sure the fact that she was so desperate that she stuck with him while he begged for your mom back, and never married her after the divorce, even though they were together for years, stings. Yeah, some people can give the whole marriage isn't for everyone spiel here, but it is still hilarious to me and I am sticking with my story, even if it makes me an a-hole. Not that being married to this particular guy is some great prize, but she must think so because a reasonable person would have left years ago. You don't owe anyone a body part. You may need it later, or someone you actually care about might. Am I the unreasonable one for letting my mom get kicked out of my wedding? I got married last year. I wasn't sure I wanted my mom to speak, due to our strained relationship. I ultimately let her, hoping she would just deliver the same fluff about gaining a son that she did at my sister's wedding. Of course, my sister told me only after the events of this post that she pre-approved that speech. Highlights. I'm happy bride found someone that's not into looks, because I don't know how she would have afforded plastic surgery otherwise. She has gone under the knife many times and has made comments about my weight and appearance since I was young. I hope groom is comfortable in a crappy apartment, because bride can never afford better. I work an office job with a comfortable salary. My husband and I are in a small home by preference, not cost constraints. Good for groom for putting up with bride's gross medical issues. Bet he wouldn't have been interested if she had been diagnosed before they got together. She then went on to describe gory, personal details of my chronic illness diagnosed a year prior. Each time she paused to let a joke land, there was silence. My husband and wedding party stared at me, frozen, waiting for my cue on how to react. They stayed seated until her bit about how I am damaged goods, referring to a time when I was 19. I had a bad date and the guy harassed me for over a year after. It seriously impacted my mental health and I dropped out of college. It is painful to think or talk about. A groomsman yanked the microphone away. My husband pulled me out to the patio. The wedding party asked the band to start the music and brought us a round of drinks. The rest of my fabulous guests pretended the entire wedding party was not doing shots and passing joints on the other side of glass doors, and they took the initiative to get the party going. I got to enjoy the reception I had planned and paid for. I didn't see my mom once. I found out the next day that the groomsmen had not only stopped her speech, they made her leave. They didn't tell me because I would be too worried about the fallout to enjoy the party and I had already declared that I would avoid her all night. I haven't heard the end of it since. My mom says I humiliated her. My family says that I should have just prepared myself because I know how she is. They say I was wrong to deprive a mother of her daughter's wedding. At first, I was certain that her leaving was justified. Now, I feel like I should have expected the speech and warned the wedding party early to grin and bear it. It's caused drama that could have been avoided if I just let my mom do her thing. I could have just stopped the speech, but let her stay. On the other hand, if my husband's dad had delivered a similar speech, I would have dragged him out myself. So I really don't know and come to strangers of Reddit, ready to accept my judgment. Am I the unreasonable one for letting my mom get kicked out of my wedding when she was just being herself? Not the unreasonable one. If your mom was just being herself, then she might need a few harsh lessons about how to behave in society. Not the unreasonable one. You humiliated her? I don't think so. It's one thing to crack bad jokes, but that's something for friends to do, not your mom. And those weren't jokes, those were nasty personal attacks. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell for more stories delivered to you. Thanks for listening. See you later.